Hey everybody, Josh from SILCA here with an FAQ question answer sort of episode for all of the amazing questions and comments that you guys have been leaving below the other videos as we talk about chain waxing systems, we talk about hot melt wax, as we talk about strip chip and chain stripper, all those things. We're trying to compile them all hopefully into one to answer the most common questions. So here we go. Question one that we're probably getting most commonly is, I've waxed my chain, maybe I've used stripper or strip chip. I put it on the bike, I've ridden it for a couple hundred kilometers. What do I do with it now? And so I'm going to pull this out. We are going to use our make-believe powers. If we can step back to Mr. Rogers' days, we're going to use our make-believe powers to believe this is a dirty chain. Of course, it's a freshly stripped chain. I don't want to have road, schmeg all over my fingers while I shoot this video. So we're going to pretend that this is a dirty chain, and I'm going to look at this chain and I'm going to think, really, one, how dirty is it? Is it just road dust and kind of the light, stuff that you get when you're riding in beautiful, nice weather? A little bit of nothing. That you can probably knock down before you even take it off the bike with a high-quality microfiber towel. Phil's going to put up for me here what microfiber looks like at the microscopic level. It has all of these little edges that are able to pick up the dust that's on the surface of the chain and trap it in the towel. This is why you want a good one, because you do not want lint. You don't want this stuff to lint off and end up in your chain, but a high quality one like the one we sell, there's other brands out there. You can do the research if you want. You don't have to buy it from me, but these do not lint. High quality microfiber never lints, but it will pick up all of that surface dirt. Run the chain through there a couple of times before you even pull it off the bike. And honestly, from there, you can pretty much cable it up and go right into your wax if it's just that very light surface dusting. If it's seen some rain, if it's seen some mud, that is a level higher of dirt. I would still knock it down with the microfiber just to get kind of the worst of it off. And then you're going to want to clean it in one of a couple of methods. So we've talked on the channel before about our awesome little, electric kettle. Boil some water. You can put the chain in a ball jar, put the chain in a bucket, an old coffee can, whatever you have that is safe to, see boiling water. You don't want to put it in something that shatters. So, check whatever you're pouring it into. But, an old Tupperware, a plastic, whatever. Pour the boiling water over the chain, agitate it for a few seconds. You will see the wax and the dirt will come out. And then you're going to want to pull the chain, kind of shake it good on some paper towels, try to get any moisture out. If you have an air compressor, you can blow it with the air compressor to, really just get most of the moisture out. And then you can go straight into the wax with it. So boiling water is option one. If you don't have access to boiling water, you can use your ball jar and you can actually go back to chain stripper. Chain stripper is pretty unique in that it will not attack wax, but it is multiple surfactants and an enzymatic cleaner that will lift and encapsulate dirt and will also lift and encapsulate oils. And so, a lot of that stuff that gets thrown up when you're riding in the rain, those are road oils, coming out of the asphalt or left there by the, cars and vehicles. So there's a variety of contaminants. All of them will be lifted off and out by chain stripper. Granted, chain stripper is a little bit of an expensive product for this use, but as we showed in our last video, you can always pour it back through a coffee filter to capture all of the particulates and the other gunk. And then you can rinse it with water, again, shake it out, maybe blow it dry if you've got an air compressor, cable it up, and straight back into the wax. The last option, and this one's off the bike, although I've got my bike here, you can use the SILCA Detox, this guy. If you clean the bike before re-hot waxing the chain, you can use SILCA Detox. This will, it's also known as brake and drivetrain cleaner. This will also lift and encapsulate all dirt, oil, stuff that shouldn't be there from the chain. It does not attack or soften the wax in any way. And so use this, let it foam up, wait till it turns red. That means it's worked. Hose everything off really well. And then you can either apply, SILCA Super Secret Drip Wax while it's on the bike as a top off, or you can take the chain off at that point, cable it up, and go straight into the hot wax. So Those are, I think, really your best options. Boiling water, it's free. It takes just a couple of minutes. It's pretty easy. You don't have to buy any chemicals or any products from anybody. Boiling water works great. Just make sure you get, the bulk of the moisture off the chain before you go into the hot wax. If you don't have that, chain stripper is a good option. If you want to do it while the chain is still on the bike as part of a standard wash, use the detox, and then, either drip wax or hot wax at that point. So hopefully we've got that covered. If the chain is super duper muddy, like you've done, 200 miles at Unbound in the mud the whole time, I really recommend cleaning the bike, like very deep clean of the bike using, the proper chemicals, this stuff beforehand, and then evaluating the chain to try to get a feel for, how bad is it? I mean, I've seen some that are bad enough that you do a pretty thorough cleaning and the chain is still bad enough that it might need a stripper or some sort of degreaser soak and shake before going back into the hot wax. Think about it from the wax's perspective. It's pretty tolerant of any dust and dirt that gets in there. If you have a half a gram of dust and dirt on the chain, it's going to be diluted within 300 to 500 grams of hot wax and then spread over as many as 60, 70, even potentially 80 chain waxing from one pot of wax. And so that dust and dirt gets distributed nicely. We've never seen in our testing that it causes wear in future waxings, but obviously at some point or at some level of dirt and contamination in the wax, it is going to start to cause you some problems. So just be mindful of that amount. A lot of questions about hot wax, drip wax. What's a strategy for a very long, potentially harsh conditions race like Unbound Gravels? 200 miles, potentially water crossings, a lot of mud, a lot of dirt. What we've seen with our athletes, if it's dry, the hot wax will last the 200 miles, really pretty much no problem. So that's one scenario. If it gets bad and you start to hear, squeaking and having other issues, you really cannot hit it mid-race with a drip wax product because this product needs time to cure, 8 to 24 hours ideally. So not a great product for the middle of the race, but you can go at it with Synergetic. Now, I know what you're thinking, Josh, the oil is a contaminant for the wax that's on the chain, and it is, but the reality is your chain's going to be so dirty and full of just disgusting gunk anyway that it's better to have a high-quality wet lube, the application of which will flush out a little bit of that dirt, and then a product like Synergetic, the dirt getting in there will act as a grinding paste, but you do have that beautiful tungsten disulfide goodness that in the bottom here, or this one, that gets shaken up, and that will help protect the metal more than really any of your other options at that point. So this will quiet down the drivetrain. See as it stirs in there, it's kind of beautiful. This will quiet down the drivetrain. It will get you to the end of the race. It will protect your drivetrain components and your chain far better than nothing at all. I will say if it's extra muddy and you have the water to do it, I would put an inverter water bottle over and run the chain under kind of as much of a high pressure water spray as you can to flush as much dirt and mud and gunk out as possible, and then hit it with the wet lube. The wet lube here will displace water. So, putting this on a chain that has some residual water on it is far better than applying this directly over mud. Now, you're going to finish the race. You've now got this chain. It's had hot wax on it. It's had Synergetic on it. It's covered in dirt and grease and oil. What is the best way to clean that? That is going to be, again, clean it on the bike with something like brake and drivetrain. Get as much off as you can, and then you're really going to want to soak that in a chain stripper or a similar degreaser product before you reintroduce to the hot wax. Having had oil on the chain, boiling water will not do it. In that case. So because the oils, this is a pretty exotic type 5 oil, it displaces water and it clings to metal. And so, if you have a chain with Synergetic on it and you use the boiling water technique, the water does nothing to that oil. It will lift off the residual wax, but the oil will be left behind, and then that will be a contaminant to the wax when you re-wax it. So I hope that was clear. I went through that a little bit quickly. Okay, so let's talk now, a couple of questions that we've had just about the wax melter itself. from your videos. Questions are, how long does it take? And some people are saying, hey, I set it at 75 and it can take 30 minutes to melt the wax. One of the tricks here is you can actually push it up to the 125 to get started with the wax melting, and that will get you to 75 a lot quicker. You just need to watch the readout here to see when it hits 75. One of the downsides, really the only downside to the PID controller, we talked about before. So traditionally, a melter like this, or a crock pot or hot pot, or even some of the lower end instant pots, they use thermostatic temperature control. And so what that means is the thermostat is saying, I either need to be on or off. And then the heating element is either at full power or no power. And so they can heat fairly quickly because, as long as you're below the set point temperature, it is cranking full power, into the pot. Now that can be a little bit dangerous for us here. We talked about, a thermostatic temperature setting in a system like this tends to overshoot and then drift back, and then you overshoot again and drift back. This is how the heating and cooling in your house works. We noticed, you set it to 72 degrees and it cools, lower than that, and then it turns off and it warms up, and then it cools below that and it warms up. That's how thermostatic temperature controls work in something like this. And because the 125 is awfully close to that 140 to 150 range where the wax can be damaged, we did not want to risk that. And so what PID control does is it controls, kind of on a ramp, the just right amount of energy to get the thermocouple and the heating element running at the set temperature. And so when you tell it 75, it heats itself to 75, and then it controls that through electricity. And so what that means is, if, in this case, if that's, call it 50% power to hit and maintain 75 at the element, then you're only putting 50% of the power into heating the wax. And so it's going to take a lot longer. If I set this guy up to the 120, you see he's already at 110 now. If you set it to the 125, it will heat the wax from cold in 10 to 12 minutes. I guess that's a little bit depending. If you're in, northern Minnesota, your ambient cold might be a little bit colder than here. But also, again, if you're in Texas or Arizona, your ambient cold is probably a little bit warmer than that. So you're probably looking 10 to 12 minutes to heat if you go to the 125, and then you can just use the little negative to push it back down to 75. I would just say if you're using that technique, be sure to, just be in the vicinity of it and watch it, because you don't want to be, if you're not using strip chip, we do want to minimize the amount of higher temperature heating of the wax. The lower we keep the average melted temperature of the wax, the better. So there you go. You're at the 75. Some questions about, in some previous videos, we'd said, hey, let it cool until it starts to have a little skin on top, which is usually about 60 to 65, and then pull it to try to maintain the maximum amount of wax in the chain. We have tested the heck out of that, and the difference between 65 and 75 is nothing in the finished chain. Really what you're trying to avoid is something like a typical crock pot low is going to be a 90 to 100 Celsius. And if you're pulling from that, the wax at that point is essentially the viscosity of water, and it does want to run out of the chain. Pulling it at this cooler temperature, it solidifies and hardens much faster once it's out of the pot. And so you just are losing less of the wax from inside the chain doing it at that temperature. And we've tested it. The difference between 65 and 75 is really nothing. We've had a couple of questions about Hot Wax X. What I would recommend is if you have a Hot Wax X tin, you can either melt that using the double boiler technique and then pour it into your SILCA wax system, or if you want to just take a snips and cut into the tin, spread it open, dump the puck out, and then you can heat it here. Just remember, Hot Wax X, it's a little bit of a different wax system, and the graphene it behaves uniquely, we'll say that. So you want to set it at 85 instead of 75 if you're using the Hot Wax X. Last one, we've had a couple of these units. They are set at the factory in Celsius. I'm a big believer in metric measurement units, if you haven't noticed that before. Fahrenheit, just for a little bit of history, the 0 point of Fahrenheit was the temperature of a like a water and ammonium chloride brine mixture, and the 100 was supposed to be the temperature of a human body. And of course, both of those, due to the measurement tools of the time, are a little bit off of what they should be. But really, they're just nonsensical, made-up units. Fahrenheit's a terrible, terrible unit, in my opinion. Celsius, 0 is the freezing point of water, 100 is the boiling point of water. Oh my God, all of life depends on water. It just makes so much sense. So we're really trying to work in Celsius because it's a logical unit. If you can't handle Celsius, or we've had a couple of these, if your unit comes and it seems to be in Fahrenheit, you can change the unit by pushing and holding the power button on the unit, and that will toggle it between Fahrenheit and Celsius. I know we've had a couple of people who got these and they started to warm it up and they said that the minimum set point on my unit is, 160 degrees. Like, oh, you're in Fahrenheit. So push and hold, that will toggle you to Celsius, and the unit should turn on and have a set point of 75 when you turn it on. I think that's it. I didn't make a list today, and Phil is not here to remind me, as he often is. So if I missed something, you're thinking of something else, please, again, put it in the questions, comments below. We really love reading those, and you really do help us create these videos going forward. Yeah. Remember to like. Remember to subscribe. Go ahead. Hit subscribe. Thank you. Like it, subscribe it, leave a comment. We love you all. Thanks so much for your support, and we'll see you next time.